Whoever's watching this here, this is the current situation in South Africa.
Police line has been broken behind me. The crowd charged through. Melbourne, Victoria is back in business. We thought maybe the police threats, as we've had the last few. We beat the police, that's it. There we go, the crowd says they beat the police. They were unable, overwhelmed the police line, and now they are marching on. I've been meaning the full report coming to rebelnews.com.au exclusively. Watch the space.
A city of 11 million people in lockdown.
So here I am sitting at home because after returning from Hubei province at the heart of the coronavirus outbreak, everybody's told you need to go into quarantine. You can't be exposed to others for several weeks.
And scientists racing to find a vaccine.
It came from the lab. I have very little doubt, and I mean very, very little doubt, came from the lab.
Well, there's no good feeling that comes on something like this saying, I told you so. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. You know, I just think back of, could I have been more persuasive? But we've actually invested very little in a system to stop an epidemic.
You know, we'll have to prepare for the next one. That, you know, I'd say is will get attention this time.
Dr. Fauci.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I've spoken at after-dinner speeches and intra-dinner speeches, but I've never spoken to a line of people waiting to get their food. So it's nice to have you. Anyway, it's the idea that we are now a few days away from a new administration. Given, as you heard from the introduction, that I have been around for a while and have had the opportunity and the privilege and the pleasure of serving in 5 administrations, I thought I would bring that perspective to the topic today, is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak.
The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Barrick and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally?
That the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute.
Do they fund
of Virology.
Dr. Barrick?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina.
You don't think inserting a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain of function?
That is
you would
not
be in the minority, because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain of function.
Well, it is not.
and the serology to see who might have been
Or
infected.
perhaps it would be
in China.
irresponsible to send it to the Chinese government that we may not be able to trust with this knowledge and with this incredibly dangerous viruses. Government defenders of gain of function, such as yourself, say that COVID-19 mutations were random and not designed by man. But interestingly, the technique that Dr. Barrick developed forces mutations by serial passage through cell culture that the mutations appear to be natural. You're fooling with Mother Nature here. You're allowing superviruses to be created with a 15% mortality. It's very dangerous. I think it was a huge mistake to share this with China, and it's a huge mistake to allow this to continue in the United States. And we should be very careful to investigate where this virus came from.
The chances of a war involving Australia and China are only rising, according to former Defence Minister Chris Pine.
Not a cyber war, but a real one.
US officials and their allies are now openly viewing Taiwan as the next conflict flashpoint.
And we will fight the war if we need to fight the war, and if we need to, to defend ourselves to the very last day, we will defend ourselves to the very last day.
Those comments come after China continues to flex its military muscle, sending fighter jets and military drones into Taiwan's air defense zone.
Our headlines today. The Taliban take control of Afghanistan. 20 years after they were forced from power, fighters enter the presidential palace in Kabul.
Whether or not you wanted the U.S. to leave Afghanistan, there's no denying that the execution of the withdrawal was a fiasco. And that's been a huge propaganda win for the Chinese Communist Party. It's like the Biden administration just gave the Chinese regime a propaganda Christmas.
A war over Taiwan that the Morrison government is suddenly scrambling to get us ready to defend ourselves properly.
And they're also waging psychological warfare against the U.S., warning of unthinkable costs for the U.S. in a war over Taiwan.
The virus began in China, in Wuhan. That's, I think, well understood.
After Australia led the world in calling for an investigation into the origins of coronavirus last year, China slammed crippling sanctions on Australian export industries.
Chinese state media blares.
A war of words and tit-for-tat retaliations erupted.
As a reminder, my notion and my book of the Fourth Industrial Revolution is that the innovations we are seeing today in terms of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, advanced robotics, and many others, together constitute a new phase in human development. COVID-19, if anything, has accelerated this ongoing industrial revolution. If COVID had happened even 10 years ago, we could not have imagined moving entire companies, schools, and government offices so fast online. Today, that is a reality. The Fourth Industrial Revolution has become a reality. So when we build the post-COVID world, when we do the Great Reset, one of the most important places to start will be to ensure that the fruits of the Fourth Industrial Revolutions are really shared by all. We come up with a new framework to regulate data ownership, intellectual property and competition in the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
It's at the end, what the Fourth Industrial Revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Klaus Schwab, an 82-year-old German economist who is co-author of a book called The Great Reset. I think we're kidding ourselves if we don't take this seriously. We must understand the meaning of the Great Reset and its impact on our civilization. We've spoken to James before, but he joins us again. James Delingpole, thank you for your time. Much appreciated. I mean, these people are seeking to transform the world economy, aren't they?
These guys are very serious about their plan, which ultimately is to reduce us to the status of serfs, which of course elites have done throughout the ages. I mean, the Western democracy is actually a relatively uncommon phenomenon. The freedoms we enjoy, we're reverting in a way to the historic norm where a tiny elite controlled the people and crushed their spirit.
They've made this point, haven't they, this great reset. There'll be no money, no private property, no democracy. Some big outfit will take over all our debt. All our debt, we'll have no debt, whatever, your credit cards, your bank loans, all that sort of stuff. But in return, you're going to have no money, no private property, no democracy. Every key decision, and what you do for a living, how much stuff you consume, as you've said, will be decided by a remote, unaccountable elite. Right.
It's not a conspiracy theory when they're telling you what they're doing, when they're putting out websites. The WEF is not to be discounted. It's a serious organisation, and its plan is serious. The only thing we've got going for us is that they are few and we are many. We need to wake up.
Suppress and vaccinate.
To protect the health system, we've got everybody locked down. We're going to move to a situation where, to protect the health system, we're going to lock out people who are not vaccinated and can be.
New York City begins enforcing its vaccine mandate for indoor activities like dining and going to the movies.
A pandemic of the unvaccinated, and we open everything up. It's not going to be safe for people who are not vaccinated to be roaming around the place spreading the virus. That's what they'll be doing. So there's
fully vaccinated people who test positive for COVID can spread the virus just as easily as those who are not vaccinated.
Vaccinated people who ultimately get infected, that they are generally without symptoms or minimally symptomatic. However, it is clear that they are capable of transmitting the infection to uninfected individuals.
Israel has now become the first country in the world to announce a third COVID-19 shot as a booster shot. The booster shots has come at a time of rising infections, despite such wide-scale vaccines having been administered to the population already. And this, of course, has called into question the efficacy of the vaccines that are being given to the Israeli people.
We earlier reported that over 1 million Israelis are due to lose their green pass on Sunday, the precious passport that allows them access to certain public places like restaurants and museums. Now over 3.2 million have received a booster shot. And on Sunday, over 1 million Israelis who have not received the booster or have since recovered from the COVID-19 infection are set to lose their green pass.
Erica, more than 100 nurses in the Houston Methodist Hospital chain say they are not going to take the COVID-19 vaccine, and that decision is likely going to cost them their job.
Our commitment is everyone will have the opportunity to get the vaccine by the end of the year. Everyone will, but I can't say that, that we're not going to have some hesitant people or some people who just haven't come forward that we don't have to go out and find next year.
We've got to get everyone vaccinated, then we've got to get everyone a booster shot as well. Then we need a plan for the children. The hospitals will be under extreme pressure when the Delta outbreak happens.
Shortly after its founding, the Gates Foundation has owned stakes in several drug companies. A recent investigation by The Nation revealed that the Gates Foundation currently holds corporate stocks and bonds in drug companies like Merck, GlaxoSmithKline, Eli Lilly, Pfizer, Novartis, and more. So the Gates Foundation makes money when Big Pharma does well, and they lose money when Big Pharma does poorly. Do you think they're going to make decisions that benefit the corporate psychopaths at Big Pharma? Yeah, I really do. I really do think so.
Workers who maintain supply chains issue bone-chilling warning that every American needs to hear. A group of international transport organizations issued a chilling warning of the potential collapse of supply chains in the coming months, and they're asking world leaders to do something to avert what would be a catastrophe. It's the International Chamber of Shipping. This group is saying, look, if you keep locking us down and making us take the PCR tests and sending us home, not letting us work, There's going to be a, quote, global transport systems collapse.
Between part shortages and massive shipping delays, gridlock is preventing all kinds of goods from getting to store shelves.
It's a traffic jam of epic proportions at sea.
And I've got a great one for you today because we're going to kind of do an expose today. And I am at the end of the Huntington Beach Pier. And there are so many container ships out here. I believe that this is totally manufactured. I believe that there are not normal delays. It's not just a labor thing. It is absolutely manufactured. And I think China's behind it personally.
Well, there are fears this morning for national food and grocery supplies as Melbourne supermarkets struggle to stay open because of COVID. Some stores are dramatically reducing their hours and might even have to close this weekend because of staff shortages. It is due to the 14-day isolation rule. When a staff member becomes a close contact of a positive shopper, thousands have been off work as a result.
But even if stores can stay open, strict isolation rules are playing havoc right through the food supply chain. The Australian Food and Grocery Council says it's crunch time for the $133 billion industry.
Consumers locally are seeing more and more bare shelves at stores.
Well, it's really had to do with the global food supply chain and distribution. It goes all the way from making sure that people could get the seeds in order to plant it, that the food that was coming out of the fields could be transported and then get into the shops so that people could buy it. So the global food supply chain has been disrupted at each of those points.
A lot of food shortages lately, massive empty shelves. But we've seen food shortages in China, food shortages in South America, food shortages in Cuba. And we know what's happened in South America and Cuba. When things get bad, people have nothing else to lose. South Africa and Cuba are prime examples of what happens.
And tonight, 2 new major cyber attacks, this time against the New York City subway and a ferry system in Massachusetts. They come as the company that supplies about a quarter of America's beef is still dealing with a crippling ransomware attack.
A 4 and a critical 5,500-mile oil pipeline remains shut down this morning. Gas shortages now being reported in at least 6 states and expected to grow, stretching down the highways as customers wait at the pumps. The governor of North Carolina has declared a state of emergency.
The United States, NATO, and other allies on Monday formally accused China of hacking into Microsoft's Exchange server.
I'm here today to advise you that based on advice provided to me by our cyber experts, Australian organisations are currently being targeted by a sophisticated state-based cyber actor. We know it is a sophisticated state-based cyber actor because of the scale and nature of the targeting and the tradecraft used.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison to a major cyber attack. To use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons the cybersecurity community can draw and improve our preparedness for a potential cyber pandemic.